this episode, we look at how to plant the perfect container. It features a video originally shot in Italy, and then we move on to some tips and tricks relevant to the courtyard. Container gardening has become very popular, and I'm going to let you into one of my favorite planting secrets. Now, first thing is pot size. Big pot size is better, smaller pot size is not so good. Now, these containers are only a few inches difference between them. If you look over here, there's maybe 2 or 3 inches. So not that much bigger, but I can tell you that the amount of compost in this pot is more than twice the compost in this pot. So if you can, don't go small. They'll dry out, the roots can't grow, and you'll be forever watering them. It's just a pain. So better off to have less small pots and have a number of these big ones that we have right here. Now this is the trick. We've got our arrangement, we've got our compost, we've got our submergent tank, and here's our container. This plant here is a beautiful passion flower, and I've deliberately let it dry out to show you how effective this method is. The flowers are closed, the leaves are drooping, there's nothing about that that would indicate that the plant was in good condition. And before you plant your container, make sure that you submerge it. Now, can you hear all the bubbles? All the water is being forced into the compost, driving out the air and completely rehydrating the root ball. Leave it in here for a couple of minutes, and this is sort of insurance that you need with a container. If you put some plants in a container that are dry, some that are wet, even if you wet it with a hose pipe, there'll still be pockets that will be dry. Okay, let's take this out. Now then, I'm going to show you this fantastic trick. What we want are these pots. This is the key. We don't want the container, the actual plant just yet. All of these have been dunked. They've all got uniform hydration. So we take the pot of our center plant, and the temptation is you plant it in the middle. Great. If you want to do that, you can do. But rarely are pots viewed from all sides. It makes sense that you have a front, a middle, and a back. So I'm going to position this at the back of the container, making sure that the level is correct. There we go. This is not higher than this. So that's that container. Around it, we're going to have these beautiful petunias. So again, take the pot and place them. We're going to put just 4 in here. You might think to yourself, 5 plants in a pot this size, that's kind of low. But believe me, that's all you need. Now look what we've done. We've got all the pots at the right height. There's plenty of space for the roots to grow, and now we can start filling with our organic matter. Now you can add some slow-release fertilizer to this, you can add liquid feed, that's your choice. But what I'm showing you here is that we're filling up all of these voids very, very carefully. It's a very enjoyable task, and it is by far the quickest way I've ever been able to plant a container. Make sure that you gently work it into all the little pockets. And you can see that that middle one is all but done. And once you get to this stage, you can start going in and pulling out the compost from in the pot itself. Make sure you get compost on every side of every single pot. Now, I've watched people plant containers, and they can spend half an hour, 30 minutes fiddling and adjusting and arranging. I personally feel that sometimes there's too much consideration of flower color and combination, and not enough of the plant's ability to grow. Just a little bit more right there. A little bit more right there. Now the key is to give the pot a little bit of a shake. Come over like this. Now you watch how this will settle. Wonderful. Now, are you ready for this? This is the secret. This is the absolute trick that will make a big difference. Watch as I gently rotate this pot. There is our perfect planting pocket. Because this has now been properly hydrated, we can put this in this hole like that. It's in, done, planted. I don't have to get in there, break any branches. Come over here and carefully twist out that pot. There's our perfect planting area. A nice white petunia. Done. Now we're going to have an alternate pattern here. Whenever you take a plant out of the pot, always invert it. Put the long side trailing over the edge. I'll turn this around. I'm going to twist this one again. Look at that, just made for a plant. Now look, we've got the white, we've got the pink. Let's go for another nice white. Sometimes leaves might get in the hole. Do make sure that you push those to one side. Planted. And here's our last one. I'll just turn that around to you. There we go. Now look at this plant. It's got kind of a bare side here, and it's got a lot more growth. Put this facing out of the container. Now, see in here, we've got this level is much, much lower. Never fill it flush with the top of the container, and absolutely never have it with a dome shape. If you put water on, the water runs off. Right here, we can have a watering can or a hose. We can flood this area, and that water can absorb in. That's it, plant a container. Now, this will thrive. The growth that you'll get on this will be truly remarkable. The colors will work. The plant is healthy and vibrant. All you have to do is fill it full of water, put it in your planting spot, stand back, and off you go. Now the pots in the planted courtyard are a really good size, 22 inches across in diameter, and they measure 18 inches high. You must make sure that your pot's got good drainage, and you should fill it 1/2 to 3/4 with your growing medium of choice. Please set it in its location, otherwise it gets really heavy. Add 1 cup of fertilizer, again of your choice. I'm using 10-10-10. It's a strong fertilizer, but the plants that are going to go in here are heavy feeders, and I want to make sure that they have enough food. Mix it in thoroughly. You've now charged your growing medium with an evenly distributed fertilizer. This really helps the plants grow with strong momentum. Leave this for a couple of days and then you're ready to plant. 2 of our pots are going to be planted with white Mandevilla. I think the pink one is really good, but it's very common. The white one is a little less available. Now I'm going to grow mine on a metal frame. Make sure that your metal frame fits your pot. These needed a little modification to have the legs bent to fit the taper of the pot. They will be tied onto the pot at a later stage. Mandevilla comes on a wooden frame, and we need to dismantle that frame. Now, with a flat-headed screwdriver, very carefully try and pry apart the 2 slats. Typically they're fastened with staples, which do pull out with even pressure. I have had a few frames with screws, which are a real bind. But just carefully twist the slats and they will separate quite easily. As you work through dismantling the frame, just take care of all the new fresh shoots. These are the locations where your first set of new flowers will come from, and you don't want to break them off or, by being a little reckless, start to snap small branches. On some projects I've accidentally snapped a large branch, and all I had to do was just go a little bit more carefully, a little bit slower, and that wouldn't have happened. This whole pot dismantling and replanting, start to finish, it's about 30 minutes. And it's very enjoyable. It's your project done your way. As you start to dismantle the wooden frame, carefully look at all the attachment points. You might find that there's two very visible uprights on the sides of the pot, but there might be another one in the middle. Sometimes the wooden slats have got an attachment tying the bottom of the slat to the pot itself. So you really need to make sure that before you start dismantling, you know every single attachment point that needs to be disconnected. It might be a good idea if you had a second pair of hands. You don't want the plant to suddenly flop and crack a few branches. Steady is good, slow is good. Take your time, and really it's a jigsaw puzzle. I must have dismantled, I don't know how many hundred of these frames in my time, and they're all just a little bit different. So if you did one that a certain way and you had great success, there's no guarantee that that same way would work again on your next frame that you need to dismantle. As you work your way through the disconnections, the head of the plant becomes naturally unsupported, and you don't want it to suddenly fall over, because that's where damage can be done. Lifting the uprights out will release all the weight onto those stems that have not had any need to support that weight in the future. And Mandevilla is a vine. It climbs, it needs support. This central piece is always quite tricky because there's a lot of branches holding it in place. So there we are. The frame is now removed and the plant is ready to be put into the pot. Any plant I put into a container, I submerge. And I'm using here as an example the iochroma because it's a little easier to handle. You can remove the pot, but you don't have to. It's important that the plant is gently lowered into the water. You don't want that root ball to crack open. Now, as it gets submerged, the water is exerting pressure on the root ball and it's forcing out all of the oxygen. So now that root ball is thoroughly rehydrated and it's ready to go into the container. With all your plants hydrated, it's now time to start assembling your arrangement. Now this pot had to be carefully cut off the root ball. Sometimes root balls can collapse. This one didn't collapse, but you just want to be sure. Set it at the right height, taking time to excavate the pot if you need to. Now this growing medium had its 1 cup of 10-10-10 added to it a few days ago, which means it's now starting to release its nutrients. And with that, we can now backfill. We can add more of our mix and start to submerge the pot. Take time to add your compost, putting a shovelful on one side, a shovelful on the opposite side, then on the front, then on the back. You want to make sure that the pot doesn't lift out of the container or move left, right, front or back. And it doesn't take long, a few shovelfuls and you've got that done. And now the next trick is to put the plant in the hole. No broken branches. Now I put a little garden twine around the head to stop the branches from falling out. You can see one lower down that I missed. But this just helps save branches getting broken unnecessarily. Now this is a two-person job if that's open to you. I have juggled this many times, so hold the plant upright and carefully lower the plant into the metal frame. And you lower an inch and you check. You lower another inch and you check. And you'll see that lower branch get trapped. Now it's important that you set the height of the metal frame level. You want it, in this case, it's about an inch lower. And you want to make it so that when the pot is level on the ground, that the metal frame is pointing straight up. You don't want to have any type of artificial slant. So it does take a bit of time. and it's well worth doing now before you start tying up the plant. Don't forget to carefully untie that initial wrap that you had around the head before you try and arrange the stems. Now what you're looking for is 4 of the major branches. You want to try and get 1 on the 4 corners. And it means that you pass the stem from inside out and then wrap it around a corner. It's a steady process. There is no quick way to do this. Be gentle but be forceful. And if something won't release, that means it's wrapped around something else. So you might identify 1 corner, lay it down, find another corner, lay it down before you start tying it up. Now when you tie up the corners, bear in mind that all the leaves are now pointing in the wrong direction. They were on the frame which you've dismantled, they're now on a new frame that they are not yet used to growing on. So the plant will look pretty shabby. You wind a stem around the metal frame and it might not go the way you want it to go. But be patient and take time to wrap carefully and slowly. And then it's important that you use garden twine to help support it. You don't want it to unwrap. Now the way you tie it is you go around twice and you want the knot to be no tighter than a 1-inch diameter. It should not be in any way constricting the stem. And once you've got 2 on, it's really easy to see what's left because you've got a bit more space. Each stem will need at least 2 ties to hold it in place, and that will help the leaves orientate towards the sun. It's a delicate job, and it's the sort of thing that a month from now, when the plant is evenly distributed over the metal frame, that you'll be very happy you took your time. Mandevilla grow incredibly quickly. They're a fast tropical plant, and with the food that we put into the pot, the size of the pot, the fact that we can now flood the pot with water and that water will sink into the growing medium means that this plant will get a really good momentum of growth. It can start to put out flowers and then set more flowers and set more flowers. As you collect plants, keep the labels. It'll help you purchase the right plant next year. At the base of this container, I'm going to add just a little bit more color. I don't have those plants yet, but they will be added in a few weeks. Now I like to tie a loop around the base of my pot and then tie that loop to the 4 sides of the metal frame. I've been on many garden estates where contractors have forgot to tie the frame to the pot and then it gets blown over and the plant is damaged. This is called a clove hitch, and it securely attaches the frame and the pot together, making them act as one. This really helps save the plant. Thank you for watching Planted. Please like and subscribe.